Welcome to the Au Jus. I'm your host, Beef Loaf. This show is being powered by From the 108 and FromThe108.com, where you can get all of our content top to bottom, blogs, podcasts, and videos, including the world-famous Sunday Soak. You can also get all of our merch there, including our infamous Wave Sucks and hashtag 108 in Garbs. This show is powered by you, the loyal 108 supporter. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to tickle the undercarriage in the process. Like, comment, turn on notifications, and most definitely super chat, because that's how we get paid, and that's how we continue to make the content that you know and you love. Tonight's guest.
Hey.
He's the former co-editor-in-chief for BP Southside, a sister site of Baseball Prospectus that focus solely on the White Sox. He's currently minor league editor emeritus at Baseball Prospectus and patient zero in the Skeptics of Rick Hahn epidemic. Nick Schaefer, welcome to the Au Jus.
Oh, gosh, thanks so much for having me. The vibes are immaculate.
I was to say, happy to finally talk to you in a setting like this. We've talked plenty of times either on the timeline or off the timeline on Twitter. So it's just good to get together and actually do this. How's New York?
Dude, it is a beautiful... It's fine. We actually have spring. We have not had spring for forever. It does the winter straight to summer nonsense. This is a spring day right now. So you got your white wine. We are good.
This is the spring feels for me as well. Yeah. When it was probably in the early 2000s when I was my wife and I were just dating, and then we got engaged. We spent a bunch of time in New York City because her parents lived there. Her father was working for Goldman at the time, like in the early 2000s. They lived on the Upper East Side, and so like we would go there and visit a couple times a year. I fucking love New York City. Like I could. That's one of the only other cities I could see myself living in. I like big cities, so that's just me.
Oh yeah, I mean my wife grew up between here and Tokyo, so for her, big cities are nothing. We went out to Chicago for my 30th birthday about 5 years ago. And it was her first time in Chicago, and she was like, okay, this is a legitimate city, which for her is like super high praise. I would definitely say do your fine dining in Chicago. It's as good as New York or better in like a third of the price.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
If anybody is coming to New York, definitely hit me up. It is a good time. Don't read the news stories. It's fine here. Like it is fine.
I was gonna say, as a Chicagoan, I know that inherently people telling me how my city is. I'm like, I don't know. I don't.
Like,
see
are
that.
you okay? And I'm
like, yeah, I
safer
think so.
here than where you are, man.
I'm good. Don't worry about me. I'm absolutely fine. I wanted to get into real quick before we started really railing on Rick Hahn, which is what I'm looking forward to in this conversation. You've worked with Baseball Prospectus for a long time. You were heavily involved in BP Southside, which was their White Sox specific site. How did you get involved with BP? Let me know the timeline and kind of how that all started.
Yeah, it's so silly. I was just tweeting, like all of the good citizens do. And about 2012, I think I just fired off a tweet that was like, I think I might do some long form or do some writing if anybody's interested. And Matt Adams, if anybody remembers, any old heads remember Matt Adams, he was running a site over on Fanside and just say, why don't you come write for us? And it was me, Matt, James Fegan was there with us, Colin Whitchurch, Kat Garcia, a bunch of awesome people. And then we migrated over to ESPN, and then we migrated over to BP Southside, and we were there until it got pulled into the mothership. James went over to The Athletic. Mark Permiano obviously was there too.
Dr. Mark, yeah, absolutely. He always has
so.
the kittens and the puppies and everything. Yeah,
we had I think it was a really talented masthead, despite my dead weight there, and then we got pulled into to the mothership, and I was the minor league editor for about 2 or 3 years at the main site.
Okay. And when you guys were first doing it, when it first started out with Fanside, was it White Sox specific, or were you spraying all fields? Okay, so it was very okay. I always wonder about that because some people venture into kind of a broader scope of wanting to write about all the teams. Some people kind of want to stay a little more focused on their specific team. And then obviously, good call. I was going to ask you, how did it end up ending? But it sounds like you guys got talent poached. One guy had to move on to his career being a doctor. James Fegan gets stolen from there. Like I get, that's kind of how things happen, I guess. Man.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny. I think back to like the original, fan-sided stuff. I was doing like minor league stuff, which would be looking up stats and being like, this Marcus Semien guy draws some walks. He seems interesting for like a 7th round pick. Like, and And that would be the extent of my scouting at the time. While I should have been paying attention in class in law school, sort of thing. So.
It's good to have a little distraction. I was as someone who's been doing I've been an accountant for 20 plus years. I can't just focus on that. I'll go stir crazy. You need that distraction. You need some other creative outlet. So it's always good to kind of have that. Do you wish you were still writing or podcasting somewhere about the White Sox?
I do, I'm so thrilled to be here just to talk about it. I mean, talking's the most free flow. You don't have to re-edit and refine things, especially in the guest seat, which is nice. So if there's a producer who wants to do all the hard work while I just freestyle complain about the White Sox, I'm down. Working around a toddler's schedule now, but no, definitely that's the main. Baby was born and late night editing about Nolan Jones became harder sell.
Yeah, understandable. Absolutely understandable.
They're really, really good.
Let's get into Rick Hahn. I mean, the way I really know you from Twitter and interacting with you on Twitter is, and I say this a lot on the 108 podcast. Everyone is has come over to the side of being skeptical of Rick Hahn. And I say out of the podcasts, the White Sox podcasts are going now. Really, the ones that were skeptics the longest are the Sox Machine guys. And now they would like Hahn to be penniless and homeless, and they want him just nothing. And on 108ers, we've been skeptical for a very long time. We just don't want him to be in charge of player development. But even before that, I remember reading you being very skeptical when this thing was going on board. So what started that level of skepticism? Where did this come from? Let's get to the origins of you effectively, questioning Rick Hahn's decisions.
Yeah, I was really encouraged way back when he was still the assistant GM, and people were saying things like, well, the Yankees are like looking at him and people are interviewing him and he's like hot up. And I was like, hey, I got no reason to argue with this. I mean, they got a talented up and comer. And so I was cautiously optimistic when he took over because I think Kenny Williams is weirdly underrated because of how this last 20 years or whatever it is now have played out. Yeah. But I don't want everyone to think it was like from jump. I just like hated this guy. But, early on, there were weird things happening. He went out of his way to bring in, I want to say Detroit to the Jake Peavy trade. And he said, no, we want Avisail instead of Jose Iglesias, because otherwise you could have just done the trade straight up with Boston. There's no reason to do it otherwise. And I was like, okay, like I don't love that. And it sort of spiraled from there because I think I actually like in preparation for this, I was going through year by year because you would ask me, when did it start going sour? He inherited Robin Ventura. So I was like, okay, I don't know how much of a role he had in that as the assistant GM.
Yeah, it's something to overcome right away.
And I think like in 2014, what was it? He came in and he brought, I had the win totals all written out and everything. Here it is, going further back. So he comes into 2014 because 2013 they had sort of tanking thrust upon them, right? Like they came off 2012. Ventura made an absolute dog's breakfast of that September. I don't know if you remember Lace and Septimo. I should have warned everyone, but sorry I said those words.
That's right.
What was it, against like Prince Fielder or something? Like, we have a lefty matchup. Like, and Jake Diekman's still here pitching to Jordan Alvarez. I mean, stuff's changed. Stuff's changed. Night, yeah. So he takes that team and they sign Melky and David Robertson, and then they're like, we're contending, and then they won 73 games. I wrote it out, 2014. Yeah. And then they do the Jeff Samardzija trade, and they're like, now we're contending. And then they won 76 games. And do you want to guess how many hitters on that team had players who qualified for the batting title with an OPS above 100?
I'll say 3.
2. The third guy had 98.
Okay, so Abreu and who else?
Oh, dude, I don't even remember. I think it was Eaton.
It's a brutal track record there. I'm glad you brought in the very beginning because I was going to bring that up too. There was a time a long time ago where some of the people in the comments probably weren't even following the White Sox that closely, where Rick Hahn was this hot prospect. Yeah. He was like the next GM.
Yeah.
And I wonder, Nick, like as it's gone along, like he's broke everyone's heart slowly but surely. For me, it was when I saw him sign Jeff Keppinger. I thought, they signed Jeff Cavender off the smart team. Man, we're doing something here. And he sucked so bad and was like, they just got, like, he was an asshole and he sucked bad and they got rid of him in no time. I'm thinking, man, maybe our man does not know as much about what I think he knows about here.
And I always try to be fair because I slam him constantly, but I think that's, to me, I feel like I'm just pointing to the scoreboard, really.
Right.
You could go back probably and still find it. I suggested signing Jeff Keppinger that offseason. Like, I was like, hey, you need an infielder who makes some contact, gets on base. Like, he was coming off a good season. Granted, his back was screwed up apparently. And, we as bloggers had no way of knowing that. And Rick Hahn had probably a better idea of knowing that, but
or should have.
Backs are tricky. So like, whatever. It wasn't a huge contract. So like, okay, yeah, that was a disaster. But I will say, like, I don't need to cynically revise history and be like, I always knew that was stupid. No, I thought that was a good idea. That was like one of signing Jose Abreu was a fantastic idea. I was so thrilled when he did it. I was like, hey, you outbid the Red Sox, who at the time were like, one of the premier franchises. And I was like, wow, we actually got this. This is the type of thing you should be doing. And it was fantastic. And it worked out, beautifully. So like, it's going to sound like I'm going to go on this rant and be like, it's all bad. It's like, no, I mean, he's the broken clock is right.
I was gonna say solidly below league average GM is where I would put him. Like just solidly below league average.
I'm
like he's not
genuinely interested. Where, I mean, I don't know. You don't need to do a list of all 30.
I would say in the bottom 7 or 8, somewhere in there is generally where I always have him ranked. I remember I ran a poll one time and asked, you think he's top 10, middle 10, or bottom 10? And actually, this was back during the rebuild. A lot of people were saying still bottom 10. So I think the skepticism's been created as we've gone along. But I mean, now everyone's there. And what do you think it is that like broke everyone's back? Was it last year just, or you think it's been coming? Like, you're going to have a clunker year sometimes, right? Sometimes you're going to get hurt and you're going to have a bad year.
I think that's what's weird is like, my perception is that, and you're more in touch with the fan base than I am, I would think, but I think 2022 did it, and that's what's so weird to me, because like the things that seem to be setting people off were things that I wouldn't, okay, they got stomped by the Astros in the division series, but I don't know. I don't put too much stock into that sort of thing. Right. I can zoom out and be like, they haven't won a playoff series since he's been the GM over like 11 years. And that's enough. Like, I don't need to say anything else. Like, you have 11 years, you should win a playoff series. Like that one series. I mean, yeah, there were flaws in the roster that were revealed that you could have seen coming. But like,
but it's a tiny sample size and you're going against a juggernaut. Sometimes you just get beat by a really good team.
I remember watching, I think it was the 2017 Red Sox play the Astros in the division series, and they got annihilated. They look like absolute. Can I swear on this?
Of course.
They look like I've never swear on Twitter. The 17 Red Sox look like dog shit. And they basically brought the same team back in 2018 and beat everyone's brains out. Like they won 108 games and won the World Series. They stomped the Astros, if I remember correctly. So like stuff happens. Mm-hmm. That wasn't what it was. I think it was just and then 2022, like really. And hey, people got to the right place. He's been a disaster.
Right.
And I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt for like a little while. The Hector Santiago trade for Adam Eaton was awesome.
Yep.
But like, I'm going through it and I was writing it down. I was like, what additions did they make as they were ostensibly trying to compete in that first buildup? And it was like, you do the Samardzija trade and then you win 76 games. And then you sign like Adam LaRoche, who like couldn't hit, and he just like cratered. And then you have, I think it was the 15-16 offseason that really like, I mean, I hated the Samardzija trade the instant it happened, and then it has gotten worse like every minute since.
Exactly. All the guys from it are having nice careers behind it.
Dude, like Chris Bassett is still like kicking. Bassett was better that year. Like, he lost the trade
immediately.
Then you trade for Todd Frazier. Like, that trade was bad. You trade for Brett Laurie. JB Wendelken, who was in the Brett Laurie trade, was part of that Oakland team stomping out the White Sox in 2020 in the playoffs. It was so funny. And my favorite stat about that offseason was, do you remember who their biggest by financial commitment outlay was that winter, 15 to 6, heading into the 2016 season for free agents, not for trades?
I feel like it's one of the platoon catchers. Like didn't they buy a couple like catchers for like they went a righty lefty at catcher? Like was that the year? Or am I thinking of a different year? Like and it was so frustrating.
The Avila Diona Navarro pairing where they dumped Tyler Flowers for Diona Navarro,
who was good, and then they got these guys and they were no good. Like
it was Austin Jackson for 1 year, $5 million.
Oh yeah, that's right. And Teresi always brings up how the season ended when Austin Jackson got hurt because they had no replacement center and they put JB Shuck out there for a while and that was an embarrassment to watch. I mean,
it was 300. He got hundreds of plays. It just got endless run, and that was what was so astonishing is you were watching that team's doing this, and they did nothing. They just sat there and watched it. They traded for Tatis for Shields. Everyone knows.
Right. Yeah.
They traded for an injured Justin Morneau, and nothing. It was like there were guys on like James Loney was on waivers, Grossman was on waiver, and it was like I don't know, man, try something. Like nothing. Like you're just gonna sit here like you watching.
Can't punt this team. Why you went for it? Why are you punting?
Yeah, like the ship is like detached from the dock and is drifting very slowly towards a waterfall. And it was like I don't know, man, like paddle, like call for help, anything, like. You just like, we're just going off the waterfall, and I was like, that's weird. It was weird. It was really weird. And that was when I was just like, alarm bells. This guy is like malpractice after malpractice. Doesn't know what he's doing.
Let me get to this drink real quick, Nick. A little Yumper salute. Thank you, my friend. Cheers.
100%. I feel like I'm already monologuing too much. But this is
No, you're good. You know, it's interesting. Like. The non-activity is really what shocked me. And I don't know, like in 2020, it was a weird season. I get it. It's a short season, whatever, but you were basically clinched the playoff spot. You had 2 starting pitchers and everyone knew it. You had the back 3 were nothing. You were grinding your bullpen up and you absolutely chose not to trade for a starter. Like I haven't been more frustrated with Rick Hahn than that year because that was the year where the offense was good. Like I was like, I know we have a good offense here. I know this is one that could ride. And they trade for a 3rd starting pitcher. I know they win that series against Oakland. And then they face off against Houston next. And Houston was not Houston that year. They were down quite a bit. I mean, they ended up getting all the way to the ALCS. But I really liked that team, like kind of what they had going there. And I was upset. And people gave them the mulligan there. Like, oh, it's a short season. You don't know what you can get. And so everyone's like, man, you know the 3rd starter. And it obviously had to go bullpen game. It didn't work out. You had Crochet's injury, whatever. But like the inaction in 2020. And I know a lot of people were down on the 2022 team. But at the deadline, they were down 3.5 games. And they did nothing. They took a salary dump for Jake Diekman. Like, some of these are to me are the underrated Hahn fuck ups. Like just is he just 100%. Risk averse or what is it? Why does he not do anything?
I mean, part of me is like this. So there's two Rick Hahn paradoxes. One is what you just talked about. You're screaming. I was like, how are you doing nothing? How are you just fucking sitting there and letting this fall apart? But then anytime he does something, it makes things worse. So you're like, no, like good, don't
touch it.
And then the other paradox is his entire tenure, every single one of these teams that he's tried to be good, and it's just a question of how much of this there is. Sorry, my hands are doing weird stuff with my blurred background.
That's okay.
It's just a question of scale. Is like the White Sox every year, their big advantage is like, well, last year you had like of the 26 roster spots, like 12 of them were like the worst players in baseball who are going to be out of the goddamn league. Like no one's going to touch them. So to upgrade on that, you don't need to do much. You like 2021 is the best example of this since 2005, where like, oh, we had some injuries, we had some underperformance. Let's throw Jake Lamb at it. Let's throw Brian Goodwin at it. Let's sign Billy Hamilton. Like, fuck it. Let's sign some guys. Let's bring some dudes in, and maybe somebody will be decent. And hey, they were. Brian Goodwin crushed righties, and like Lamb like a little bit, and Hamilton helped out a little. You know, instead of Schuck sitting out there being like -2 wins, and just like it's like, can we get the replacement level guy, or even a little better than that? Instead of, I like to think of we use the 2080 scouting scale. Like roll 5 is like an average player. 80 is like, you know, peak Mike Trout or whatever. And then 20 is like Ray Almeida. And like, instead of having 20s and 30s, like if you get a 4, if you get a roll 45, like that really, really, really helps. And Hahn can't do it. He just can't. So like, that's the other paradox is it should be so easy to upgrade these teams, but he fucking can't. He can't do it. He just can't do it. And it's like, it's just, you're sitting there and it's like, surely this time, like, he'll just through volume of attempts, like some
you gotta get lucky, right? I mean, this is why I've always thought about it too, Nick, is like, you can't be that bad because you have to get lucky occasionally. Occasionally you have to just get it right because there's only a finite amount of teams and there's all these excess players, and once in a while these guys are going to show up and they're going to be semi-decent, and there's so much of it where they never are. Like 2021, you're right, is the only year where you got a couple of those to click, where you had a couple guys just become okay when those spots.
Like had his hot month and like
exactly.
Yeah, it's just it's unbelievable. And I think something, I mean, look, all right, here's a question for you. What is Rick Hahn good at, excluding the like joke response, like killing the White Sox or like keeping Jerry happy? Like fuck the joke answers. Like, what is he actually good at? Like, name a strength he possesses.
What he used to be good at, taking advantage of pre-arbitration players and getting them to sign team-friendly deals. However, the marketplace caught up on that, and the players realized they shouldn't take those deals anymore, and so that evaporated. It's like, this was what I was thinking about leading up in this conversation. He was once a hot prospect as a GM. Is that just like, was it fool's gold to start, or is this just a regression of skills? Is this just you never got better at anything? Like, you were fine when you started, but without outside thought, without bringing in talent into the organization that could help you underneath you, your skills regressed. You stayed in the same spot, and you got worse at all these things that you used to be good at, because his pre-arb contracts right now, they kind of all look like crap. I mean, the Luis Robert one has a chance to save itself, but the Moncada looks bad. He's gonna have to be really good for that to work. The Eloy one looks really bad right now. Like, they're suffering.
Dude, Aaron Bummer is guaranteed $5.5 million next year, and Bummer's been effective on and off through his career. And he's like a huge development win for the org, because they don't have many of those. He was a 19th round pick. You got any good performance out of him, fantastic. But then you immediately locked him up through all his ARB years, which is saying, we win this deal if this guy like fucking crushes to the point where he's going to get huge ARB rewards. But when you sign those deals, what you're doing is you're losing the ability to cut bait with somebody when they go south, which pop-up arms tend to do. There's a reason he was a 19th round pick. And look, I appreciate that I'm saying this the day after he had a terrible outing, so whatever. Like, I get it.
I think he needs a fake IL stint. That's what I need. I just don't want to watch him right now.
But if he sucks all year and he's just washed because he got hurt all the time and he was a 19th round pick and his command sucks, you're on the hook for $5.5 million next year, which shouldn't matter, but it does for this stupid team. So like,
that's right.
Like,
your environment.
And I think the question too with Hahn is like, I don't know how good he ever really was. With analysts, and I include myself in this, with analysts, with GMs, like, the league is changing a lot. It's always changing a lot, and smart teams are adding more and more and more people, and they're trying to keep up. And even someone like, Kim Ng, who like should have gotten a job 15, 20 years ago, and it's like screwed up that she didn't. I think she's a little behind the curve now, because like 15, 20 years ago, she was like, as good as anybody, but I don't know how well she kept up. I don't know what she was doing in the league office. And like, I don't mean to single her out. Like, there's tons of Saber analysts who are still fighting wars about stats from 20 years ago, who never moved on. It's take your pick. Fantasy, like, our running backs, are relievers all the same? No, they're not all the same.
Exactly.
People thought that, like, smart people thought that a while ago. So like, I don't think Hahn ever kept up, but and this is part of where he gets in this weird blurry thing with Jerry, where anybody who's like, well, it's not Hahn's fault, it's Jerry's fault. And it's like, yeah, I mean, like, look, I'm never going to defend Jerry Reinsdorf.
Me either.
But like, Hahn is his guy. So I don't know what point you're trying to make when you say that. And I do think between Hahn and Jerry, like, you have to assume, the thing you have to assume with the White Sox is that anything you cannot see, you have to assume is being done as badly and as cheaply as possible. So like, and with baseball organizations, that is now every year more and more and more things. Minor league coaching, pitch design, player evaluation, nutrition, technology, you name it. Like, these are all building out because these teams print money. And I think it's still, I mean, if Rick's got like two guys with a laptop, like he's falling further and further behind. You'd be less behind 15. You know, if Don Cooper had some cool ideas about cutters 15 years ago,
Right.
you could get the weird delivery guys and you could say, hey, we can keep him healthy because Herm Schneider knows about weighted balls that nobody else does now.
Yeah.
And you could parlay that into some competitive advantages. But like, I don't know what their competitive advantage is now other than relationships in Cuba, maybe. Like, that's kind of it. I don't know
an
what
angle
else.
for sure, but
I don't like even the pre-arb extensions look like shit now. He can't trade at all. He's on the losing end of three of maybe the. I think he may be the worst GM at trading since Bill Bavesi. He's on the losing end of maybe the worst trade of the 21st century, and I think he's on the losing end of 3 of the top 5 worst trades of the 21st century.
That's
definitely 2.
Obviously,
definitely
the Tatis one is for sure.
Yeah, well, and Semien and Bassett for 1 year of awful Jeff Samardzija. Like,
it's horrendous
for a team that didn't stand a chance. Like, quick, what? And then trading one of his few good signings was David Robertson, trading 1.5 years of David Robertson, 5 years of Tommy Kahnle,
yes.
A half season of Frazier for Blake Rutherford, who you could have just drafted that year, but you loved Zach Collins so damn much. You drafted him. Like, it's just that trade special for me. I'm sure there's more trades than that, but like that one for me is also like, because you look at what some of those other trades got back at that deadline. I think Tony Watson got traded for. I'm going to do some good radio here and look up who he was traded for. It was some sick prospect.
While you're looking this up, Nick, I'm going to get to a couple drinks. Jeff Chester, he says, cheers, boys. Thank you.
Oh, Jeff.
Appreciate you, buddy. And then Gar Ridge says, the au jus is all right. Oh, appreciate you, Gar Ridge. Thank you, my friend.
Okay, so Tony Watson was traded at the same deadline as that by himself for 2 guys, some guy named Angel Herman, who didn't become anything, and one other prospect who was extremely relevant in 2023. I don't know if you can guess who it was. Tony Watson, the clue would be the trade was between Pittsburgh and the Dodgers.
I don't know.
O'Neal Cruz.
No, that's a good trade.
We traded multiple relievers who were as good or better than Tony Watson and Frazier for fun. For Blake fucking Rutherford. Like, this guy sucks, man. He's so bad.
He never hit for power, and when he came here, it was like, well, he's still going to develop this power, and he was an older prospect too, right? If I remember correctly, he was like an age 19 drafted out of high school guy, like all the warning signs you could possibly get. Everything that could come through there.
One must imagine Blake Rutherford gaining 15 pounds a month.
That's right. That was always going to be the key. Now, we beat down Hahn a little bit, but Nick, what would you do? Like, what type of person would you put in this role if you were replacing Hahn? And it doesn't have to be a specific person. Just be like, who would gravitate to the role? Who do you think would do a good job in a location like Chicago as we presently stand? I know things could be in flux in a few years. We may have new ownership or whatever, but just as of right now, who would you think?
I think it needs to be somebody who, like, assuming that Reinsdorf has whatever fluid.
He's a vampire.
It's going to keep him alive. Yeah, his phylactery remains hidden. People keep inviting him into their houses so he can feed.
Right.
I think you need. So assuming that ownership continues, I think what you need to do is find somebody who can persuade Reinsdorf that it is more cost effective. And I don't care about cost effectiveness. Like,
right, but he does.
Right, he does.
Yeah.
So that's the water you're swimming in. That it's more cost effective to invest in the player development, coaching, and catch up to everybody. Like, catch up to everyone. I mean, Steve Cohen is apparently, I think, and I'm sure if Jared Seidler ever sees this, he might correct me. I don't know. I think he's simultaneously, because he's just doing fire hose of money. He's like, I'm buying free agents to make the major league team good right now, and I'm also building up the player development thing so we can be Dodgers East. Like, cool, that's great.
Right, I was gonna say that's what the Dodgers did when they came back again, and they had to take over that tire fire. They started that way. Yep.
So but Jerry's never going to do the first part, but that's fine. If you actually did, and Dude, I wrote about this in October of 2016, and I wanted to be wrong. I always want to be wrong about this. I sometimes am. I sadly, I'm usually not. I'm not like super informed. I'm not that great at this. I'm better at this than Rick Hahn, which is depressing as hell. Like, every fan says that, and maybe your hands are tied behind your back because, like, Jerry, but whatever. Like, take that with a grain of salt, asterisk. But like the most important things you can do as a GM are evaluate talent accurately and put the infrastructure in place to get the most out of that talent. Those are the two most important things. And you can talk about rebuilding, are we selling, are we buying, like blah, blah, blah. Yeah, like overall strategy is important. But like if every year you're taking a 3rd round pick or a 4th round pick and turning them into a major league regular on top of all the normal stuff that teams can do, you're going to have a huge edge. If you can develop a reliever instead of paying Joe Kelly $10 million a year, like, then you're not paying Joe Kelly $10 million a year to just like suck. Like, then, it's just like, so if you can find a GM who can convince Jerry to actually make those investments, that instead of paying Joe Kelly $10 million a year, take that $10 million and hire like 20 people.
Right.
Like, that's what needs to be done. Who that is, I don't know. If that's possible, I don't know. Because this is the guy who wanted to pay Scott Linebrink instead of his draft picks. Like, this is Jerry Reinsdorf. Like, that's who it is. So I don't know. Which is weird because, like, normally you would just say this all redounds to cheapness. But, like, it isn't that simple. If it were just cheapness, you'd think he would have gone all in on the Rays stuff years ago.
Right.
And that's why this rebuild was infuriating. They traded their all-stars for some prospects and did nothing differently. Nothing changed. Not a single thing changed otherwise.
They really didn't draft anything helpful. They didn't. Not at all. I mean, they didn't even gamble enough, in my opinion, Nick, on the random post-type guys and put them in spots during the rebuild. We were watching all these guys. It's like, who even has upside? And we celebrated one crazy year from Daniel Polk, and we thought, oh, maybe they tried one guy that was like a post-type. It was a 3rd-round pick. Maybe he's got some power.
For you. They did that.
That was just for entertainment. They didn't get anything out of that. Like, they had all that. They had all those plate appearances, all those innings to fill. It didn't put anyone in position that turned into someone.
Is there anybody on this roster presently? Because you have the rebuild, and you trade Sale, and you trade Quintana, and you trade Eaton, and you got some guys back for that. Is there anybody on this current roster who was found in the rebuild who wasn't a huge investment? Bummer is like somebody kind of
closest one, right?
but then they locked him up, so like you're not really. It's fine. Like, I'm happy for Bummer. Like, dude.
Yeah, you should get paid.
Yeah, make your money. Because, like, I wrote this, like I said, October 2016. I want to be wrong about this, but I was like, if you don't evaluate accurately, don't develop accurately, you're just kicking the can down the road and saving some money for Jerry in, like, the intervening years. Because, like, Houston, everybody talks about the tank and the rebuild. Before Jeff Lunau got there, 4 players at least were already there. Dallas Keuchel, Jose Altuve, George Springer, and Colin McHugh. Those were already there. Yeah. None of them was a big investment at all. Springer was a 1st-round pick, but he was like 12th overall. He was like a college guy. Anybody could have taken him. You don't need to tank to get that guy.
He was cold weather college guy too, right? He went to like Connecticut or something like
UConn,
that. So so like it was like not an unusual guy. So
no, and then even the Cubs, the Cubs spent a shit ton of money on free agents. Got lucky. They got lucky that Houston took Appel instead of Bryant. Yes. But like they had Tommy LaStella was like a scrap heap guy. Jake Arrieta and Pedro Strop. They've like filched from Strop from Baltimore. Yeah. Like the White Sox don't have any of those guys.
No.
Do they? Am I missing someone?
No. None that I could think of. That they just sort of flipped random stuff and banked a 3-win player. No, they did.
No, I mean,
it's all like premium guys from the trades are paying $60 million to get Luis Robert, which, I want to do that. We were thrilled when that happened, but you got to fill in around these guys. It's
right, and that was great point. That they did that. That was great that they did that, but that was like all the Hahn moves since like 2014 that have worked out are kind of like layup type moves where it's like. Yeah, the Cardinals also were offering Luis Roberts $60 million. Like, great that you upbid them. Awesome. Great job. But, like, you didn't solve some mystery that Luis Robert was, like, an incrable athlete. Like,
right. This wasn't a scouting win by your people. I think everyone in the world knew that this guy was this is also what I bring up about I've made this point a few times about the Chris Sale trade or even the Jose Quintana trade. These are like auctions. If someone knows a great talent's out there, it's hard to lose badly on a trade like that because everyone wants to bid on it. They all want that guy in their group. So it's different than making like a mid or low level trade where you can really get buried. These ones you're not gonna, because it's like auction in fantasy football. You know, the top guys are gonna go for about what they go for, and that's kind of what it is.
He held serve on some of those sales, and like, you know, I think the other package that was floated for sale was like Victor Robles plus a couple of the Washington pitchers they wound up getting for Eaton. I think so. Like, you know, I think Moncada is probably better than Victor Robles. That was not a unanimous opinion at the time, but actually, it's like not necessarily clear. Victor Robles is a really good defensive center fielder. You know, I think Moncada is better, but Robles is more durable.
Moncada has one great year outside of the contention, the quote unquote contention window. Was 19,
he had a great year and then a good year in 2021.
Yep.
And like, I think it was right to go with Cease and Eloy instead of it was the Brewers package was like some really cool guys who want like super athletes that wound up busting. Lewis Brinson and like,
I love Lewis Brinson.
Yeah, he seemed really cool. He busted. The White Sox were definitely not going to fix Lewis Brinson. So, but yeah, fine. He held serve. Kopech looks like he's a back end starter plus reliever type guy. Moncada, I think, is, if healthy, is a plus third baseman.
Yeah. Got real guys from it.
Fine. I guess. That's cool.
Let me get to this drink. Baloney says, salute everyone. Yeah, salute to you, Baloney.
So Baloney is obviously your first name, and then Fonseca's, I guess, is your maiden name? Or the internet for fun?
That's right. Let's move on to the current White Sox team right now, Nick. One guy that before the season, I was screaming about, I don't want the White Sox to waste. Now he's come out, he's hit home runs in 3 straight games against right-handed pitching, which is a shock to us. I thought he could only hit lefty. But you've been editing prospect stuff at BP for a long time. Are us Meatball White Sox fans, do we really have something potentially here with Jake Burger? Could he become a guy?
Yeah, so I'm going to get, all right. Yes. So Jake Burger I've always been really ambivalent about that as a draft pick because they already had Collins, who at the time was like, this guy's a first baseman. This guy's not a freaking catcher. I don't care what the White Sox people say. And, they already had Abreu. And then, once Eloy was on board too, I was like, that guy's a DH. That guy's not an outfielder. I don't care what the White Sox people say. And I was like, okay, you drafted a right college first baseman. Who other better organizations passed on because they effed his medicals, specifically because of his ankles. I think that is now public. I don't think I'm like speaking out of turn. I had to keep my mouth shut about that for a while.
No HIPAA violations now.
No. Right. But like, so, and then it's like, oh, his ankles blew up. Oh, poor Rick. And it's like, well, poor Jake Burger, poor guy. Yeah. Like, but that was why he fell to you there anyway, is because other teams were like, that's too risky. I'm not doing it. All of that said, when the White Sox drafted him, I was like bitching and moaning to our prospect team and our very sober and wise and well-informed prospect team were like, it's a really good bat. They were like, it's plus hit, plus power. Like, it's a really good bat. And once he got hurt, I was like, I don't know if this is ever coming back. Mm-hmm. But it's, it's good bat speed, good power, good bat to ball. Like, we'll see how many walks he can draw. I think the platoon advantage thing is interesting. Like, how much of it is just if he gets some reps, he can claw that back to a stronger place. Like, no, I think Jake Burger could be a plus first baseman for sure, and maybe a little more. I mean, when you have that much power and that much, like, you could, like, are you CJ Cron? Are you Pete Alonso? Are you somewhere in between?
Nick, I'll take CJ Cron. Yeah, at this point, with this team and a lack of power, I would take a CJ Cron right now.
And it's I'm so happy. It's a fun story. The team star for power and for fun stories. It's awesome. I think it's less meatball-y than you think, and it kind of dovetails with my negative Nancy stuff about Eloy. Eloy.
Yeah, right. Too ground ball-y, yeah.
Well, like, for Eloy to be a star as a DH, he needs to be like Yordan Alvarez. Yeah. And, dude, he is not. Like, he is absolutely not. 50% ground ball rate, all the time. I don't think he's ever going to walk a lot. I don't love. It's never. I don't know. I've never really been. I've been the low man on him for a while.
Yeah, you just think that he'll never reach the ceiling because of all these things, and he never improves at any of them. And it's kind of like I had a conspiracy theory when they put him on the IL that he wasn't even really that badly hurt. They just wanted him to get his goddamn shit together. Like you're goofing off too much. Get your shit together, Eloy. Like because last year he had a great second half and he was playing on one leg. The guy couldn't run at all. I'm like, the guy can still kind of hit even when he can't run. And I'm like, now he's on the IL? Well, I didn't even see him get hurt. Like, what the hell's going on here? But it does
sound... They didn't give him a rehab assignment.
No, just throw him in there. Here, you got 2 weeks off, now go in there and hit. Of course, he struck out every time.
And, like, Eloy's got reverse platoon splits, which is just bizarre. He's like he hits like Tommy La Stella against left-handed pitchers, which is, like, not what you want from your plotting DH who gets hurt all the time. And Jake Berger absolutely, at present, annihilates left-handed pitching. At a minimum, he annihilates left-handed pitching. So he does one thing at present much better than Eloy Jimenez. Presently.
Yeah. That's right.
And so, like, I don't know. That's kind of interesting. Like...
I mean, for my money, I would keep trying to figure out ways to get Jake Berger in the lineup because this team is just dying for power. Your normal first baseman right now is treading up on 70 plate appearances with no home runs yet, and I just think this is going to be a trend with Andrew Vaughn. I know people are like, oh, you're always hating on Andrew Vaughn, Beef, but you see the deficiencies here, and he's getting a fair amount out of his profile here. He's walking a lot. He's got almost a 400 on base. It's good, but it is what it is. I don't think he ever becomes the monster you guys all think. He's too small. I just don't think it ends up happening. And right now, they seem to be dealing with him just fine. They're not worried about him hitting for power.
Do you have any memes about him being too small?
I have plenty, yeah.
Okay.
None that I can put up on the screen right now. I think I pulled them all out of the StreamYard right now. But I have the one making fun of him because he's like the same height as Larry Garcia, and Larry Garcia is like 5'8" or whatever. So, I mean, he's just a small guy. I just think there's... and I love Larry. But I just think there's limitations to what can be accomplished. He's not a great athlete. Like, the small guys that get a lot of power, they're terrific athletes, right? These are guys these are the guys that are 5'9" that could dunk a basketball, okay? I'm sure Andrew Vaughn is not that guy. He doesn't look like that guy. So, I don't know. I would like to see them sneak around and get Jake Berger absolutely as many plate appearances as possible. And so I'm thrilled to hear that the prospect guys were like, even the hit tool is plus. You know, so that's encouraging.
And that was,
Senior Sox.
Senior Sox. No, and that was pre-Achilles, but obviously he's producing in the majors now. So, I mean, I think we had him as a top 100 guy, and I don't think particularly low. I think somewhere between 50 and 75 was where we had him before his post-draft, before his ankles exploded. But like, I guess that's part of this goes back to our like Hahn's omissions stuff. We're like, okay, you're terrified that you suck at drafting, rightly so. So you start drafting college bats, safe college bats. So you're drafting at like 8 to 12, somewhere in the draft. And you're like, I just want a guy who I think can recognize a pitch, draw a walk, has power. And so it's like, okay, so you're drafting all these like first basemen. And even if you've hit on like two of them to an extent, like Vaughn and Berger, like I think it's credible to say like, yeah, you could make this guy your first baseman, like you'll be fine. And it's like, okay, but now you've used like multiple top 10 or 11 overall picks.
Right.
Like, and you're just churning out the 12th best first baseman in baseball over and over again. Like the rest of your roster's dying, dude. Like, this can't be the only plan. And if it is, if you're going to say, all right, we're going to keep drafting these like above average first basemen, you got to trade some of them. You can't hang on to all of them. You can't keep them all.
I was going to say sometimes they don't return the trade that you think they would because they're lower in trade cap, especially a right first baseman and an undersized one in Vaughn potentially there. But the other issue too, like you mentioned CJ Cron earlier, there was a time when CJ Cron was getting passed around for $4 million a year and you could get 25 homers out of him. Who the hell wants to trade much if that's out there available for free almost? So you got to really hit these guys, you know.
And that's the thing, even with like Gavin Sheets, it's like, well, we think he can help. he's a developmental win for us. We're not getting offers that we like for him. It's like, because he's not that valuable, especially not for you. Especially not for you. Now that you have Benintendi and Colas, like
You don't need him.
his pure left-handedness alone. Like this roster does not have a fourth outfielder. It just doesn't.
No.
You have Colas, Robert, and Benintendi, and that's it. Like you have no other outfielder. And like Romy Gonzalez, like Romy Gonzalez. This is one of those things where I'm like, I'm so annoyed. This is like added to the list where I'm like, I'm right and I'm miserable that I'm right. Where it's like everyone's like, oh, we had this great offseason. I'm like, okay, like says Rick Hahn, like he's like 27 and he's got like a 40% strikeout rate and like the high in Charlotte, like beef, like you would have a high 20s strikeout rate in Charlotte. Like, I mean,
the power would show up too, even though I'm 44. My power would come back.
Yeah. Well, just hit it in the air and it'll go. I mean,
get out of here. That's right.
Zach Collins was a Barry Bonds in Charlotte, but like that's normal spring training stuff, and it's fun. You should praise the guys for putting the work in. He's certainly got physical tools, but it's like
he's an athlete. That's
just spring training buzz. It's positive spring training buzz. The team's not supposed to buy it and act on it. Like Romy Gonzalez was never going to make contact with a major league pitch. He can't freaking do it. And like if he goes to the Rays and he goes to the Dodgers and they change something and he does, great. I hope he does. I hope he makes $100 million. But like the 2023 White Sox can't be like, oh yeah, our fourth outfielders are Romy Gonzalez and Gavin Sheets. It's like, why are we here?
Exactly.
Why are we fucking here? Why are we doing this? Like, just trade Tim Anderson then. Like, if that's like,
especially if Adam Duvall was sitting out there having a picnic for the entire offseason. He was out there as long as Elvis Andrus. No one signing them. It's like, this is a perfect fit. Bring this guy. Just bring in a guy who can actually do something for the outfield.
They finally made us sit through all those years of Adam Engel, and then they finally made a roster where Adam Engel made sense for the first time since he's been here, and then they fucking DFA him.
Get out of here.
They finally made a roster where he fits.
Yeah, right. Where you finally needed that righty bat off the bench. You never needed it. It was always so redundant. And and then finally, all right, see you later. Welcome to San Diego.
Gavin Sheets. You got Gavin freaking Sheets.
Let's transition here. A guy who started off as a bit of a folk hero as he started this White Sox career in the dugout is now turning into a villain very quickly with most of White Sox fans, and that's Ethan Katz. Nick, just your general thoughts on Ethan Katz. What you think his 3 years with the White Sox have looked like so far, and where do we go from here? With a bullpen that has the highest ERA, and I know that the FIP and XFIP are trailing, but they're still horrendous also. The team's walking 14, 15% out of the bullpen. Like, it's just a shit show with those guys. The starters have been, other than the dead arm week, they've been okay, but the bullpen's been an atrocity. What's your thoughts on Ethan Katz?
I mean, they needed to, like, the game had passed Don Cooper by, and he didn't seem. I mean, Don Cooper retired, fairly well, and they need to replace him. And Ethan Katz certainly had. He came from outside the organization. There were reasons to recommend him. He's had some successes for sure. I mean, like, I think Carlos Rodon, I think Giolito, I think Ronaldo Lopez. These are all guys who benefited from having, like, it was so weird watching Carlos Rodon after all those years be like, oh, you're using your legs now? Like, cool. Like, you can do that? Awesome. Like, you've got strong, like, legs and you're throwing 98, like, easy now. Awesome. Good for you, man. But, like, I do think he is, like, a credible modern pitching coach in that sense, as far as again, I don't know what resources he's being given. It's Jerry. I mean, it's Jerry, so I'll,
limited resources. Most likely.
The New York Times headline version is like, White Sox pitching coach given limited resources. Yeah, like that's the polite way of doing it. But there's definitely, I'm really conflicted on this because I don't know how much personnel decisions he's being given latitude on. Apparently Clevenger, I think people say he was like a Katz recommendation. I don't know what that means about was he vouching for his personality? Because in that case, please put Katz on sorry, I'm just readjusting here. Put Katz on, on an ice floe somewhere if that's the case. But they've done well with some scrap heap guys. They've continued to do well with scrap heap guys with Katz here. I think like blaming the bullpen on him is like is hard for me to do because like Rick Hahn. Where all right, so Hendricks got cancer. That is nobody's fault.
Right, nothing
That's
to do there.
you paid huge for Hendricks. I thought it was a weird way to spend your money considering you don't use any, but he's been awesome.
Yep.
Worth every penny. He got cancer. That sucks. That is not trivial. You could have predicted he might have gotten hurt in some other way, given how he got used literally right up until you signed him.
Yep.
But let's set that aside. You invest in Kendall Graveman right after he got traded for leading like an anti-vax revolution in his clubhouse. He can't pitch back-to-backs. He can't pitch face more than like three batters. Like, and you paid him 3 years, like $8 million per. Like, that's a big investment. Joe Kelly, you signed. He's like old and like coming off a surgery on his throwing arm, and guess what? He sucked. And that's what's weird. I was like, oh, the injuries are back this year. And it's like, okay, Moncada aside, all the guys who got injured have sucked. So like, who? Like, right. Ella got hurt. That is anybody who's peddling this line. I've heard from like people who are good. Or be like, well, Eloy was like hitting well, and then he got hurt, and now he looks not ready. He was hitting like shit before he got hurt, so that's a lie.
Yeah, one good game.
Like Joe Kelly, it's like, oh, we lost Joe Kelly. It's like Joe Kelly's been awful since he's been here, so I don't know. So like, those are your big free agents.
Joe Kelly tracks like the Kelvin Herrera signing because he was hurt when he walked in the door, and we find out later on that he had something in his contract where he didn't have to pitch on back-to-back days until after July 1 of that first year. It's like, what the heck is going on here? Why investing all this money here? So you're right. There's a bunch of like seeded players that have tenure that are like, these are the guys you use that are no good.
And you got they red paper clipped Zach Collins. They red paper clipped the 10 overall pick into Zach Collins, into Reese McGuire, into Jake Diekman, and then Reese McGuire's hitting like 330 in Boston, and he's a good defensive catcher. And I mean, they're fine there, but like you got Jake Diekman, and he had this guaranteed money this year, and I think he's owed $1 million to buyout next year.
That's correct.
And he sucks, and like, but he's getting paid, so they're using him, and he's terrible. He has like 20 command, and like
I gotta say, him a lot. They're using him a lot because he's durable. I guess he's available. Maybe that's his only thing he's good at. He's available.
I'm teaching my kid to throw left-handed, but like, what's nuts is that like you have Hahn spending all of his resources. All right. I'm so sorry that I cannot say the name of the player. I don't have permission to do that.
Okay.
But I'm putting my face and my real name on here too. I'm not like, Rick Hahn's golf bag or whatever on Twitter. Like,
that's right.
Hahn really wanted to give a big free agent contract to a particular reliever who is so obviously effing washed, and Jerry wouldn't let him spend the money on it and saved him from himself. So like, for all that everyone talks about Jerry tying Rick Hahn's hands, Rick Hahn effing loves washed ass relievers and giving them all of his money. And it sucks because Keenan Middleton's here and he looks fine. Yeah.
He does look fine. Yeah, I was happy to see him. I hadn't seen him pitch in like 4 years. I was like, whoa, this guy's back. Oh, good for him.
Yeah, and he was pitching for the Angels too, which like might as well not exist. So like,
exactly. Yeah,
but it's like, dude, you spend everything. You spend another top 10 pick on Garrett Crochet, who is obviously a reliever, and everyone's like, oh, this is the thing with the injuries excuse too. It drives me effing crazy. It was like the Jake Berger ankle thing was like, again, they should have known. They did know.
Yeah.
And like Crochet's another guy where our draft. Our draft guy at the time on our prospect team, who was since been hired by a team, a very good team, and he's doing very well with them, loved Garrett Crochet, but he was just like, look, he pitched like 3 innings his draft year. He throws like 100, but like, I don't know how many innings you're getting out of that guy. He was like, I think he has the repertoire to be a starter. He's like big, he's strong, but like, even the guy who loved him was like, yeah, like he's going to slide because these are obvious drawbacks to the profile. And lo and behold, you got a lefty who throws 100 at like pick 11 or whatever it was. And it's like, wow, we're geniuses. And it's like, why do you think he was there at 11?
Right.
And so you've had both experiences. Like he was awesome. And then he got hurt. And it's just sort of like, oh, poor us. He got hurt. He's so good. And it's like, yeah, but like, that's bullshit. Like you can't have it both ways. You can't like,
You can't take the risk knowing all the things
Yeah.
and then say, "Oh, the risk happened to me. Oh, well, it was me." Like, so you should feel bad for me. Oh, no, you took that knowing that. If the guy stayed healthy and you got lucky, great. That was great.
Yeah.
But you knew the things.
Yeah. So I don't know. So the bullpen, like, again, all this is to answer your question about Ethan Katz. Like, dude, I have no idea. Like, I like, what's he supposed to do with like Joe Kelly in 2023? Like, I don't know.
Right.
I mean, to their credit, you talk about the bullpen ERA. Like, I'll give him some credit. Like, I mean, a lot of those earned runs are from Hanser Alberto.
That's true. That is true.
And a lot of them were Jose Ruiz being asked to wear it before they cut him.
Right. Yeah.
Which is, again, you're treating people kind of shitty.
That's rough. Yeah.
They treated Lurie kind of shitty too. But like a lot of, they are cycling, like unlike other years, they have this problem. They seem to be kind of trying to, like, they brought out the Schulten guy who I didn't know. They brought in Middleton. They seem to be kind of, except Beekman, who's guaranteed a spot because Hahn traded an all-star catcher.
I say they just brought up Tanner Banks again to use. Yep. So yeah, I agree with you. At least they're using the methodology of, all right, let's try that next arm and let's shuffle a guy out here and just see what parts work. I've finally become the Meatball Bears fan, but for the Sox. Anyone who's out there as an arm, bring them in. I want. It's like when the Bears are real bad, and I want them to just bring in anybody because like this team stinks so bad. I'll put anyone on that. That's how the bullpen feels to me right now. And and Middleton looks pretty good. Like, okay, good. We got one guy that looks like he's decent maybe out of this group.
And he's doing some. I think he's doing different stuff with his pitch mix too, which is cool. So it's not just like entirely like doing this, but I think the bullpen is the one place you can really do that too. It's just like cycle through live guys' arms, see if they've got a new pitch, see if they've got a new pitch mix, and like see if it works, or see if they're feeling better after some, some this is the one area you can actually do that successfully, which makes the Kelly and Graveman and Herrera contracts like that much effing stupider. But like the bullpen is one of those things where I'm just sort of like, look, it looks bad. It might be an area of weakness all year. But that's not my issue with the bullpen. That's not my issue with the bullpen. Yeah. I mean, really, you could have signed another starting pitcher and put like Kopech back there.
And change it. Yeah, right. And really added some reinforcements to it for sure. Nick, let's close this out on it could be a fun topic. We'll see. I don't know. You have a choice to make. You've mentioned a couple times in the show, you're a new dad. Are you going to choose to steer your child into becoming a White Sox fan? And you're not currently local, so you do have a little more. I don't know. Does that make it tougher or easier?
So that's the thing is like in thinking about it, it's a really good question, and I've thought about it a lot. And actually, I guess the answer is that I grew up near here too. All the games I went to growing up were at Yankee Stadium. Okay. My dad's from Elmhurst. Stayed there all through college, and then he relocated out to the East Coast. My mom is a Yankee fan from upstate New York originally, nearly named my sister after Reggie Jackson, sort of thing. Nice. And then I grew up, my dad would bring me to like White Sox Yankee games. He would try to find double headers too. Like I went to Dave Righetti versus Jack McDowell, but like not on the teams you'd think. Like McDowell was pitching for the Yankees. And so like, and I remember once I went and I wore a Yankee hat one game and a White Sox hat the next game because it was like mom's team, dad's team, like, whatever. And I actually really liked the 96 Yankees as a 9-year-old kid living in Connecticut. Like they were underdogs at the time, as such as it was. And so I think the White Sox just won out because I just watched White Sox games with my dad. And he didn't ever say like, you are a White Sox fan.
Right.
I'd be like, Dad, who do you like? And he's like, well, I like the White Sox. I like, Harold Baines. I like, Minnie Minoso. I like, all this stuff. And it just kind of happened. I'm probably more positive on the Yankees than most White Sox fans would be by, virtue of that upbringing. I think they're, honest with themselves. But I think if he likes baseball at all, I'll be sitting here watching the White Sox. I hope he gets to see a new owner, even if maybe I won't. But who knows what? If I had to guess, I wouldn't be surprised if he grew up going to Mets games with me and his granddad on Jane's side, and wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the way the Mets are kind of like signaling like we're going to be good and we're going to be fun. That's my prediction, but who knows? Maybe I'm just Maybe he just wants his dad to be happy. I don't know. We'll see. What do you like? What do you think?
That's
Like,
funny.
what do you think
Well,
I should do?
I think it's funny that you bring up the Mets because I'm an age where the Mets were my second favorite team growing up because I was 8 years old with the '86 Mets.
Oh, cool.
And they were just like a juggernaut, and they had all these. They had like movie stars on the team. You know, like you got Doc Gooden and Darryl Stroud. All these guys are bigger than life and just like superstars and all this
And, like,
stuff. So I really
fun.
like
Like,
that.
fun and
Yeah, it's
weird.
fun. It's a fun team. That's like, man, I wish the White Sox were like that team right there. You know, that's the team I want them to be like. Yeah, I think it's more of an organic thing, like to kind of allow it to let where it lays. Like my daughter's 13 now. She likes the White Sox because she goes to games with me, and and now she's at the age where she goes on a Friday night. She wants to hear all the gossip amongst the young 20-somethings who aren't that much older than her or whatever. And so it's kind of like in the 108 section there, she likes to, some of the social vibes of what's happening right there. But I took her to a Bulls game this year for the first
nice.
time, and she's like, she loved it. She was like, this is, and my daughter plays basketball too, but
cool.
it's like the Bulls, going to a Bulls game is pure entertainment top to bottom, right? The skill of the players, but then also there's a lot going on during the game. So baseball isn't kind of like that. You really need to like buy into, if you're attending, or you need to buy into the relatively slow pace of baseball too in general, like to become a fan of it. But so yeah, I would let it lay organically, but yeah, put the seeds in there. I mean, the Mets may be a lot of fun, and then that's something you guys can have a little rivalry about. You never know.
Yeah, when the Mets and the White Sox are in the World Series together.
Exactly.
You never. I mean, you don't know. I mean, if I like, that's what's weird is like we talked about this a few weeks ago, and I was like, I was feeling more optimistic about this team heading into the season. I think the general consensus was because, like I said, I wasn't as shocked or disturbed by 2022. I was like, yeah, this is kind of what I thought was going to happen. And I was like, you got 3 real outfielders. You don't have a fourth, but you have 3 real outfielders.
It's a good start.
Andrew Vaughn can play his natural position.
That's good.
They can't be as injured as they were last year. It just seems, and they won't play, like they shouldn't play guys injured like they did last year, which I thought was a real, like, that's one of the real cardinal sins too, because that's unfair to the players.
Right.
Like Luis Robert up there dropping the bat and stuff, like
he's swinging one-handed with the back.
Yeah, just like a joke. Like anybody can see it. And I was like, that stuff shouldn't happen. And just by that alone, they should pick up 4 or 5 wins. And you lose Cueto, you lose Abreu, like that's not nothing at all. But I was like kind of optimistic. But then again, remember what I said, anything you can't see on this team, you have to remember is being done worse than you can possibly imagine. And I actually like some of the guys in the high minors. Like I think Jose Rodriguez could be cool. I think Colson Montgomery could be good. And obviously I was kind of high on Colas coming into this season. I thought people were a little slow to adapt to like the bat speed or like react to like how well he did in the high minors last year.
Yeah.
Including the White Sox. They should have called him up in September.
Agreed. Let's give a test run last September for sure.
So I was optimistic, and I guess 16 games shouldn't change that.
Agreed. That's the way I feel. I've watched some bad performance for the first 3 weeks. I think I'm still around the same level of optimism. You could have this bad 3 weeks anywhere during this season. Just so happens to be right out of the gate, so it makes us feel even worse.
Yeah, and everyone's like, oh, well, they're going to play the Rays and Blue Jays. And I was like, yeah, those teams are better than the teams you've been facing. But like, when does the White Sox opponent have anything to do with the hell the White Sox are doing? Like,
that's absolutely true.
If Hanser Alberto isn't like, leading base runners into Tim Anderson's knee, like, who knows what'll happen?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We got a shot. Well, Nick, I want to thank you for bestowing your White Sox thoughts on Rick Hahn, Jake Berger, Ethan Katz, and the days of BP Southside. Remember, we aren't trying to be right on this show. We're just trying to understand. Do you have anything you want to plug before you go?
Oh, just the BP prospect people. Like, if you got into prospects during the White Sox rebuild, I do think it's genuinely worth. You learn more about your own prospects by reading about all of them, because you have a frame of reference. You can put things in perspective, and you'll start. It's really crazy if you really, really start digging into it. You'll start having these like snap reactions of like, I don't quite see it with this guy, and like you might find out you're right more often than you think, and you might start really start building this encyclopedia of like, oh, this comp fits, like this player reminds me of this player, or how good is this prospect, or he reminds me of this other prospect in Cleveland who like walked more than he struck out in the high minors, and like that maybe people are sleeping on that. Like, Anyway, BP prospect team is absolutely incredible. The whole site's awesome, but like worth the subscription alone for that. I swear.
Absolutely. I'm a longtime subscriber. I used to only subscribe just to get Pacoda, but I love BP. I have for a long time. So thank you so much, Nick. Take care, my friend.
Oh, thanks for having me. So much fun.
That was Nick Schaefer. Next week's guest is going to be Chris Tannehill. I'm going to make Chris Tannehill teach us new podcasters how to make our podcast sound better. He's the sound guy here in Chicago. I want to grab some knowledge out of his brain. I'll also let him talk about the White Sox in trade for stealing some information from him. Thanks again to Nick Schaefer. Thanks to all the 108 family who's up in the YouTube comments. I appreciate all of you. Make sure you hit the like button, comment, and of course the drinks and tips. Really appreciate that. Peace to everyone. We'll see you later.